The wind over Dry Creek always carried a sound, a thin, whispering hum, like the land itself was keeping a secret. On the morning of October 3, 1876, that whisper turned into a scream. A girl named Lila Harper, 17, daughter of the local blacksmith, walked out of her family's cabin just before dawn, and vanished without a trace. No wagon tracks. No footprints. No torn fabric on the mesquite. Just silence. By the time the sun split the horizon, Dry Creek was awake, and the hum spread like wildfire. Every face in town wore the same unsettled stare, a mix of fear and disbelief. Because in a place like Dry Creek, where every gunshot echoed for miles and every stranger's boots were counted before they hit Main Street, people didn't simply disappear. Sheriff Amos Finch arrived at the Harper place with his hat low and jaw locked. He'd seen ambushes. He'd seen massacres. But nothing gnawed at him quite like this. The Harper cabin door was still swinging on its hinge when he got there, not from wind, but from something heavier. Something intentional. He walked the perimeter 3 times, his boots pressing against the same dry earth that showed no sign of struggle. Could have been taken by riders, muttered Deputy Cole. No, Amos said quietly. If riders came through, the earth would have told me. Behind the cabin, the land dipped into a shallow gulch. And there, something strange, a single silver hairpin, stuck upright in the dirt, glinting like a signal. Amos picked it up carefully. Lila's father confirmed it was hers. Word spread. By noon, the townsfolk gathered outside the Harper smithy. Miners, ranchers, gamblers, the preacher, all thrown into one circle of suspicion. Old Widow Merrow crossed herself 3 times and whispered, "It's the Whispering Creek, it's calling another." She wasn't the only one who believed the land had its own will. Dry Creek was no ordinary town. Built on the edge of the barren plains, it sat atop an abandoned Spanish mine, rumored to be cursed since before the first shovels hit the ground. Folks said the earth beneath had taken more lives than the gun ever did. Tunnels collapsed without reason. Horses bucked at invisible shapes. And once every few years, someone simply disappeared. But this time felt different. Sheriff Amos started his search by riding north, where the land opened like a scar. He found wagon tracks belonging to Elias Brandt, a trader with a reputation for moving in the shadows. Brandt had rolled into town 3 days earlier with crates he refused to open and eyes that never lingered. Witnesses claimed they saw him near the Harper cabin the night before the disappearance. By evening, Amos tracked Brandt's wagon to a dried-out arroyo. The campfire was still warm, but Brandt was gone. In his abandoned wagon, beneath blankets and supplies, Amos found an engraved locket. Inside was a tiny charcoal drawing of Lila Harper. The mystery deepened like a canyon floor. Brandt became the prime suspect. A search party of 10 men formed, torches and rifles in hand, scouring the hills as night swallowed the town. The only sound was the wind, humming that same strange hum. 3 nights later, a blood-stained ribbon appeared on the church's front door. No one saw who placed it there. No one heard footsteps. But the preacher swore he woke to the sound of a woman's voice singing a lullaby from the bell tower, though no one else was there. Fear began to rot the town from within. People whispered behind closed doors. Merchants closed early. Mothers kept their children inside. Lila's father sharpened his hammer like a blade and refused to speak. Amos spent sleepless nights at his desk, staring at the locket, the hairpin, the ribbon, 3 clues, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. But something gnawed at him worse than the evidence, the eyes of the townsfolk. Every man and woman seemed to know something they weren't saying. Because the truth was, Dry Creek had buried things long before Lila vanished. One night, just before dawn, a rider burst into town, breathless, eyes wide. He was a prospector from the abandoned Spanish tunnels. He swore he'd seen a lantern deep inside the mine, moving slowly, as if someone was down there. The townsfolk refused to follow. But Amos did. He descended alone into the belly of the abandoned mine, torch in hand, revolver at his hip. The walls seemed to breathe, echoing with whispers he couldn't place. He found marks on the rock, freshly carved, strange symbols that looked neither Spanish nor Apache. And far ahead, a faint glow, not flickering like firelight, but steady, cold. When he reached the deepest chamber, he found something that would haunt him forever. A child's shoe, pristine. Lila's. Placed neatly at the center of the cavern floor. And beside it, scratched into the stone, were 3 words in charcoal. She heard them. Sheriff Amos Finch stood in the heart of the abandoned Spanish mine, torch crackling weakly, the shadows around him breathing like they were alive. The child's shoe lay untouched on the cold stone floor, and those 3 words, she heard them, stared back at him like eyes in the dark. The walls seemed to murmur. Not like wind. Not like echoes. But like voices. Layers of whispers overlapping, just low enough that he couldn't pick out words, but too deliberate to be chance. He swallowed hard and pressed forward, every step crunching over loose gravel that sounded deafening in the silence. The tunnel forked. To the left, the air felt still. To the right, a cold draft slithered through, carrying that same low hum Dry Creek had always known. He followed the cold. Deeper. The light dimmed. His torch began to sputter as if the air itself resisted fire. Then suddenly, a sound. A metallic clang echoing down the corridor, followed by what could only be described as a child's laugh. Amos froze. It wasn't behind him. It wasn't ahead. It was all around. He raised his revolver, spinning slowly, but there was no one. No movement. Only shadows shifting against the walls like figures pressed beneath glass. For a moment, he thought he saw a handprint slide across the rock, disappearing like breath on a window. And then the torch went out. Darkness swallowed him whole. For 30 long seconds, all he had was the sound of his own heartbeat and the whispers growing louder. But among the whispers, something else emerged, a woman's voice. Clear. Calm. Singing the same lullaby the preacher had heard from the bell tower. It was Lila's voice. Amos struck a match with shaking fingers. For the brief flicker of light, he saw something at the end of the tunnel, a figure in a white dress, standing perfectly still. Hair long. Face hidden in shadow. Bare feet on stone. And then, as quickly as the light caught her, the match burned out. When he lit the torch again, the figure was gone. Amos stumbled back out of the mine at dawn, pale as bone. He said nothing to the townsfolk waiting at the entrance. He just handed the locket and the hairpin to Lila's father and walked away like a man who'd seen the face of something he couldn't explain. The search continued for weeks. They combed every gulch, every riverbank, every wagon trail. No body. No tracks. No ransom note. No proof Brant ever took her. In fact, Brant himself was found months later, hanging from a tree miles north, his wagon burned, his pockets full of Spanish coins no one could trace. The town buried the ribbon in the churchyard. The preacher rang the bell at sunset every night for a month, hoping the sound might call her back. But all it did was draw the wind, and that haunting hum. As the years passed, Dry Creek rotted slowly. Families moved away. Mines collapsed deeper. The Harper smithy closed for good. And the story of Lila Harper became less of a mystery and more of a warning, told in hushed tones to newcomers: don't go near the mine after dark. Don't listen to the wind too long. And if you hear the lullaby, run. Decades later, long after Sheriff Amos was buried and the town was half swallowed by dust, travelers claimed they saw a girl in a white dress standing by the old mine at night. Some swore they heard a woman's voice humming through the cracks in the earth. No one ever went down there again. And the message carved into the stone, she heard them, was never erased. To this day, no one knows what Lila heard in those tunnels, or what took her. Some say it was spirits bound to the old Spanish mine. Others believe it was the land itself, claiming what was stolen from it. But one thing's certain, Dry Creek remembers. The West has many stories. Gunfights. Train robberies. Outlaws. Lawmen. But some stories don't end with answers. Some just echo, carried on the wind like a song that refuses to die. And in that whispering wind, somewhere between history and myth, Lila Harper is still